So today we have Saskia Joss joining us today. As always, we've had Saskia on with us for a few webinars and have always gotten amazing feedback. And this topic is actually a bit different to what we've talked about, but has similarities as well. So before we get started, I'm going to just give you a very quick overview on TeachCloud. So we have a lot of customers on the webinar today, but for those of you who don't know, TeachCloud is a cloud-based management early years application. So it's used in Ireland, UK, and even further afield. And you'll see on your screen, we have a number of features like child observations, risk assessments, and so on. We're doing an amazing discount of a month free trial and then only 50 cents per child per month. So that gives you all of the features that you see on your screen and then a lot more. So if you have any questions at all about TeachCloud, just email hello@teachcloud.com. Or if you have any questions about this webinar, feel free to again email hello@teachcloud.com. A question we get asked all of the time is this webinar going to be recorded? It is, and we will make that recording available to you, and you can share it with anyone that you feel will benefit from it. So I'm going to just drive straight in to the webinar, but before I do, for those of you who have not heard Saskia speak before, the first question is on your screen, but maybe Saskia, if you can give us a bit of an introduction to who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Saskia Joss, and I am an art and play therapist for children and adolescents from London. I was a primary school teacher for 8 years before I made my decision to move over to helping children more kind of emotionally and psychologically. Before that, I was particularly in the early years. So I was a kind of early years expert at that point, and I was working in the early years field, but I kind of moved away from that because I worked at a new school where lots and lots of the children were affected by very difficult daily lives. They were lots and lots of children in food banks, lots of children were refugees, lots of children were experiencing domestic violence. And as a teacher in the classroom, trying to work out how to manage 30 children when you knew that there were children that needed more was very, very difficult. So I decided to requalify as a therapist for kids, and I've now been doing that for nearly 5 years. And I love it and I think it's awesome. And if you've heard me speak before, you will know that my big feeling is that we're constantly trying to help children feel as safe as possible by making things actively feel safer, and also that we're trying to help children have an emotional vocabulary at every age so that they can explain themselves better, be more able to identify their own feelings, and have healthier relationships for the rest of their lives. We've done lots of different things about children with anxiety, helping young children with anxiety, which I think is something people rarely talk about, as if the last few years won't have affected the younger children, which of course it will have. And we've also talked a little bit about how to use books and other things to help make your classroom more accessible for children and to help improve mental health. So this time we're talking about transitions and how we can help children to feel prepared, but we also wanted to kind of have a little bit of an extra layer to it, which was about helping children who might be arriving to your country as a refugee at this particular point from the Ukraine or anywhere else. And we were thinking about kind of what are the skills that you might need to manage that, and also what skills do we need generally to help children with change and transition. So the first question, I don't know if Wendy's going to come and ask me, or I should just crack on, so I will, is how can we prepare children to move rooms or classes? And I think obviously lots of nurseries have great experience in helping children to kind of have a bit of time to play in the next door room, or to have a bit of time to meet the person that they're going to be with. But I think also it's really, really important that we prepare our parents with the things that they will need, which is the right information to get kids ready. They need to know who it is, where they're going, how many children will be there, do they know any of the other children, so they can tell their child. We can allow our parents to help us prepare the children by giving parents more information, by helping parents to to kind of share with their kids in advance, so that they've done the kind of legwork when we can't see them over the summer, or when they're about to move rooms in a holiday, because they've got to a new age. And we can if we give our parents enough information, they can definitely help us. What we can do is we can make sure that the children have kind of seen those locations before, that they have met some of the adults before, and that if they've got any friends that are kind of moving rooms with them, that they know that, you and Billy are moving next door in September. It's very exciting. And trying to kind of bring this excitement to the kids and make sure that they know where they're going and what the difference will be. I think we regularly do this in schools, and some schools are really, really good at it, and some settings are not so good at it. They do a 10-minute quick look around for the kids, and they're like, bye, thanks so much, you've had a great time with us, and now we're ready to see you next year in a different room. And for lots of kids, that's just not enough. Particularly children who've had upheaval, particularly children who might have moved house, or had a new baby, or had other things in their home that feel up in the air. We're not taking those things seriously enough if we don't give children the information and the time to acclimatize. So from a therapeutic perspective, it's about logistics, in terms of they need to know the information to get to a new place, but they also we need to think kind of personally about, what would it be like for you if I just took you to a new building and said, right, bye, you've got 10 minutes here and then you're going to start here full time in September. I think you'd feel like you haven't been properly prepared. And I think what we're trying to say is, even little people are still people, and they need the same kind of preparation that you might need if you were going to move house, that you'd had a good enough time to look around it, that if you were going to move jobs, that you understood where the photocopier was, things like that. I think it's important to make sure that we are taking children seriously as people in the process of moving, as we would and hope that someone would do for us. So I think the key is information, and I think also for families, it's making sure you give your information in multiple ways. Some families will respond better to a meeting, a year group meeting in person, where they get to be able to ask you questions, and some won't come and would rather be given a piece of paper that literally has everything they need to know in one go. And I think particularly in this case, when we're talking also about inviting new students who might be coming because they're refugees to your school, it would definitely be worth it at this point to see if there's anyone on your staff, or a friend of a friend, or a family member who speaks Ukrainian, who can help you translate your documents. Yes, there's not a huge amount they might need to know. They need to know if there's a uniform, they need to know what time the day starts, they need to know what time pickup is, they need to know if the children need to bring a snack, but there's not very many things. So in terms of getting some help, yeah, you could put it into Google Translate, but that probably won't be enough to make it really clear to someone who's also struggling with their situation, having moved country and been in a situation where they haven't had good information because they've had to rush away from their home. If you can find someone who can help you just to write one very quick document. Hi, lovely new Ukrainian parents, we're very excited to have you at our school. These are the things your child will need to know for September. Please let us know if your child is potty trained. Please let us know if your child naps. Give, the things that would be important to you if you were moving your child to a new nursery, particularly under duress or under a difficult situation. What things would be the most important that need to be communicated, and ask someone if they can translate for you, but actually writing it down properly, writing it down, making it look professional and like you really care about these families and what they might have been through, and trying to make it as easy for them as possible. So I think all of these things go back, as usual, to the things that I do, which is about trying to be human about the process. What would you need? What would you need to feel comfortable in a new place? What factual information would you need to get things done? And how can we make people feel included in the right way? So is it in person? Is it a phone call? If they haven't got in contact with you, could you make another phone call or an email to them to make sure they have the right information? We always end up in all schools with the family that comes an hour late on the week that the clocks have gone back, and the family that tries to come in the holiday, and the family that tries to come in on the bank holiday. We always have it, every year. And that's because being a parent is hard, and it's hard working in schools as well. And we're just trying to be compassionate to the process of movement, which in this case in transition also includes a much bigger transition for some people, that they might be moving their families across country or across borders to try and get them to a safe place. So that's even more kind of human compassion that we're looking for in terms of preparation.
Saskia, I mean, there was a lot of information there, but I think one of the golden nuggets there was just be human. I
Yeah.
think if you always put yourself in somebody else's shoes, you'd be like, if that were me, what would I like? You know,
Yeah.
and then it makes it a bit easier to empathize and create those documents of, you know, what would the parents want to know. And I think another important point is that every parent will be different. You know, so some parents will love a letter, others will want to meet you in person, others might like an app, you know, and it's just getting to know those parents individually, whether they are refugees or, you know, it's just a child move transitioning.
A
Yeah.
local family that you've known for years. And I think the other thing is trying to remember what it was like for you. You know, yeah, you might not never have moved country, but you probably moved house, or you probably moved school from primary school to secondary school. And what were the things about that that kind of threw you off? Well, that will be the same for families. Or you might remember, if you yourself are a parent, that when you dropped off your child for the first time, even if you work in a nursery and you think you're really hardened to it, and every year you see this family's dropping off, you might think, actually, I remember when it was my first child, I was really nervous that they wouldn't remember that she had an allergy. Or I was really nervous that they wouldn't remember that he doesn't like the things that most boys like. He much prefers to play with, you know, do painting rather than cars. And it's always separated him from his friends. And we've really found that hard. And I'm, you know, make space for the personality of the people that you're looking for without letting them push your boundaries of what you do in your nursery, but making space in a human way for the fact that the reason why we talk about transitions is because they're hard. They're hard for children, they're hard for adults, and they're obviously harder for people who've got emotional needs, physical needs, disabilities, language barriers. All of those things will be much harder, well, because transitions are hard for everyone. That's why we talk about them, because they're hard. So I think all of it is about being compassionate and human, and just trying to give the right information in as many ways as you can. That means that people really will get it before they move.
Yeah, and I think just before I move on to the next question, we talk about transitions a lot, I think, in early years and probably in primary school as well. And on Teach Cloud, we've created a specific area where you could summarize all of the child's learning, you know, their likes, their dislikes. You can even do an assessment, download all of that, package it, and give it to the primary school teacher or whoever needs to see it. But it doesn't matter what way you're doing it, the ability to collate that data, you know, even if it's something like allergies, again, we've just added something on Teach Cloud just on special attention and allergies. All of those things build up the picture of the child. So yeah, completely agree with that, Saskia. So we'll move on to the next question, which is, how can you help children with separation anxiety?
Yeah, I would say firstly that nurseries tend to be the absolute best places to manage separation anxiety. I think it's a very amazing thing that we do every year in nursery settings, which is that we settle hundreds of children per year, because often some kids only come for a few months or they find another setting. And we manage to, at a time where separation is the most incredible issue for the exact age of children that we see in nursery schools, you know, from 6 months to 5-6 years, is the time where separation anxiety is the most prevalent. Why do children have separation anxiety? Because we need our parents to keep us alive. So from when you are born, when you come out of your parent, whether you came the most straight way through their tummy, through wherever, we have to have our parent, our caregiver on our team. They have to like us, they have to care for us, they have to have time for us. And if they don't, we die. And that's like, you know, I have to put it out there in straight terms, which is why separation anxiety for children is such a humongous feeling, where they feel totally overwhelmed, because it triggers their death instinct. It triggers the feeling that they will be not looked after to a point where they might die, which is an extremely shocking thing to say when you think, look at our beautiful setting. It's got lovely chairs. It's got beautiful paints. We've got snacks for everyone. It's got tiny toilets. It's so beautiful. And this child is going, I might die if I go in there. You know, it's very confusing comparatively to what we're actually offering. And that's what makes separation anxiety so difficult to deal with. It's a disproportionate response to something that's not at all worrying. But if you have spent and have a very good relationship with your caregiver, and then they say, right, I'm going and I'll be back in 25 minutes. Firstly, the children have no idea what that means. Even if they're doing a very quick drop off and you're just doing a tester, children don't know what time means. They don't understand 25 minutes is the same as 2 hours, 5 hours. They don't understand. So when they're a person of safety that makes them feel that there will be a continuation in their life, that they will be looked after, they'll be cleaned, they'll be fed, they'll be put to sleep, the things we need to survive is going to be away from them, the fear that those needs will not be met is extremely acute for some children. Why is it easier for some children and than others? Well, in some ways, it's the children who have a less good relationship with their caregiver that seem to run in as if it doesn't matter, because their needs are only partially met. So their needs may be the same amount of met with you as they are with their caregiver. In some ways, the children that struggle the most with separation anxiety are the ones that are being best met by their parents, the one whose needs are really being very, very well managed. But also sometimes it's the opposite. And that's what makes it really complicated. It's very hard to assess the parenting of a child in those, firstly, when you don't know them and they're standing outside with a child that's crying and you're trying to help the parents get the kids inside. But what we're trying to do is offer the child an experience of safety inside the building. So some people have said, obviously, that because of COVID, when we couldn't let families in to take their children inside and put their things on their peg, the children actually got to grips with being at nursery much quicker. If you found that in your setting, there's no reason that you have to change just because COVID is finished. If you really found that it was faster for your kids to transition without their parents inside the building touching all the stuff and, you know, really elongating the process of separation, don't change your policy. Keep your policy, whether it's COVID or not, that the parents leave the children at the gate. You know, if you found that that wasn't the case, and actually it really dysregulated your children to have to say goodbye to their parents so quickly, have a 15-minute window where they're allowed to kind of mill about, or have a section in your classroom where parents stay just out, kind of where they can see their kids but are just out of sight, so that the children can know that they're there for longer. I think the big thing about all of these things, like we were talking about in the last slide, is as long as it doesn't make it difficult for you to do your job, there can be a space for humanity in what each family needs. If there isn't enough space in your classroom for 30 adults to stand there congregating, obviously you can't do that. If there's one family that wants to and no one else wants to, it wouldn't be too problematic. If everybody wanted to, it might be too difficult. So I think the key is to try and think of the logistics of your nursery and how you usually do it, while also putting a little bit of space in for families that may need slightly different arrangements. Obviously, families with children with special needs or families with children with language needs may need help and more time in the classroom. They might, for example, if you have a family from the Ukraine, they might need time if they don't speak English, which they easily might, but they also might not. They might need time to go around the classroom with you and the child to show them the things so they know what to expect. They might need time to help you make labels for things that so that you can use the right words, where they help you sound out the word for toilet or the word for carpet, so that you can say those things and have very minimal but a few interactions in the child's home language to make it easier for them to understand the structures that you're dealing with. I found that in different nurseries, they have lots of different methods for managing the separation anxiety and also managing the process of settling for children. The most successful one that I've seen is where the children build up over time, that they're not expected to stay for the whole day or the whole morning without their parent, that the parents are kind of given a space relatively nearby, either, you know, outside in that outside area or in a coffee shop across the street with their mobiles, and the children stay as long as they can manage for a few weeks, and they build up over time. If that doesn't work out logistically for your setting, you have to do what you've always done. But I don't think any setting should be afraid to change what they do if it's safe for them to do that, and they've got the space to do it, if it will help the mental health of the children that they're bringing in, and also if it will help the mental health of the parents they're bringing in. You know, parents can be very, very anxious about the process of separation. They might want to be able to see their child or check in with you. You know, obviously it would be much easier to use Teach Cloud, because you could then send a message to them directly: your child is fine, please go home. Your child is not fine, please come back. Rather than having to make personal phone calls to everyone, would save you a huge amount of time to use the systems that are already set up on the app in a really clever way. And that's why I think it's such a very clever app, because it gives you this opportunity to speak to parents very quickly, which is the whole thing in teaching, that, you know, at any age of teaching, any age of childcare, there's very little time, and having to call 30 parents and say, yes, your child is fine, they're actually sitting in the home corner, your child is fine, that's too much energy. Whereas if you can send fast interactions to parents, you can make sure that everybody is calm. You're giving a feeling of safety to the children, but you're also giving a feeling of safety to the parents, that their children are being well managed and you care about them. which I think is the key to quick transition from separation anxiety. Obviously, you all know about setting up classrooms to make sure that they look enticing and they're good fun, but we also have been talking a lot about setting up classrooms to have spaces that are quieter, and spaces where there might be a tent a child could sit in where they couldn't see the rest of the classroom, or places where they can listen to music with headphones on, to try and make a safe space for them if they are not able to regulate in a room full of children when they haven't seen any. Obviously last year lots of children struggled with coming into a setting with lots and lots of people post-COVID, having not been in a room with lots of people, and then suddenly they were in a room with 60 other children, and it was very overwhelming. Making these calmer spaces inside your loud space. If you've got a broom cupboard, maybe for the next 6 months, make it in something else, move the broom somewhere else and make it a quiet space where the children can be quiet in there. Don't obviously lock the door or shut them in any way, but kind of see if there's any other space that you haven't considered, under the stairs, down by the front door, where you could put a tent, where you could put you could put some big boxes that the children can sit inside and color when they just need a bit of extra space. At the beginning of the year, we always end up with those big boxes for all the new things that we've ordered for the classroom. Keep a few, just in case you've got a few kids that maybe could do with a bit of private space, where you can, they're not doing anything dangerous because they're inside a contained space, but that there's a space for them. Very, very useful for autistic children that might be overwhelmed by the amount of people in the room. Very, very useful for children who have suffered trauma and just need silence for a bit. Offer the boxes, offer these rooms, offer the music, offer a quiet place, offer a comfortable place, offer a place with, fidget spinners and squeezy toys and whatever, where children can make space for themselves when they feel dysregulated, and you can identify where they are and kind of send them in the right direction. So yeah, there are obviously lots of things. I think the most important thing is not being afraid to change what you've done, even if you've been in an established setting that does things really well. Thinking about, are children the same now than they were when I started my setting? Are families the same? Are we actually all much more anxious? So separation anxiety is going to affect more families, more children. And what can I do to kind of combat the fact that we're different? Just because I've always done it like this doesn't mean that we have to. And just because you've got a manager that's always done something a certain way, if you don't feel that it's right, say, I noticed something last time when we were doing the transition, I realized that kind of some I thought might help. You don't ever have to make anyone feel like their ideas are bad or embarrass them. But if you think that something could be better, always do say so, because you could be the reason that one child settles in a day rather than 5 weeks. And you could be the reason that a family connect with the school and help you and bring things in all year round to help you when you're doing, planting. They bring in the bag of soil, and because you help them at the beginning, and they will. Families, I always feel that families you connect to will connect back to you, and help you run your setting even better, because they want you to do well with their kids. If anyone finds a setting that they love where their kids are happy, it's the most incredible relief. I know families who, even once they move house, drive 45 minutes to an hour every day to take their children back to the nurseries they went to before, because they're so happy there, they wouldn't want to try and mess about with it. If you've managed to find a place where your child doesn't feel anxiety, separation anxiety, isn't overwhelmed, we would all fight for that. And you can be that setting by just considering whether your practice could be any better and more considerate to families and children.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the things that's actually hard about early years, is that you're always learning, and you're adapting to the needs of the children. But I really agree with that, Saskia, because, like you said, our children the same as they were 10 years ago. Some aspects will be the same, but we have gone through like a major pandemic, and there's lots of different economic, social factors that are different than they would have been maybe 20 years ago. But I think you're probably preaching to the choir, because we have people here who are taking time out of their day, but yeah, really great points there. And the next question there is, what can be set up to provide simple access points and consistency for new students?
Yeah, so obviously I know that lots of schools now regularly use visual timetables. You can also easily find online, I had a quick search before just to be sure that I wasn't making it up, that you can find visual timetables that are in with English and Ukrainian, or other languages in Ukrainian. I don't know whether in Ireland it's regular to use Twinkle or not, or whether it's accessible, but in the UK it's really normal for schools to use this particular website called Twinkle, where they make those resources for you. And if you have a free account, most of the things you can access and just print them out, so you don't even have to make any extra time, if you've got someone who's going to translate a letter for you for your new Ukrainian parents or other parents that might need a different kind of letter, ask them if they wouldn't mind just walking around the classroom with you and giving you a 1 minute tutorial on the things you say the most. You know, sit down, stand up, toilet, water, you know, just, and learn 6 or 7 words of another language, which is hard, but it's not as hard as it could be to try and speak the whole language yourself. There's very lovely things they use often with autistic children, but also with other children as well, where you kind of have, where each child who's new with another language is able to use a kind of picture card to prompt you. So they would give you a picture of a toilet if they need to do a wee, or they would give you a picture of some food if they're hungry. So they don't have to try and communicate with you. And I think the main thing is having a structure that is the same. So some nurseries always start with free play, and then they always go to the carpet, and then they always have snack, which is great for children in terms of all children enjoy structure to be regulated. But for the children who really might be overwhelmed by a change in country or a change in language, it may be even really useful for their parent to stay with them for the whole first day and say to them, every day it will be like this. Every day we start, and show them on your timetable. We start with a play, then we have a snack, then we do a wee, then we do this, and make it very clear that it will always be the same, that they don't have to guess what's coming. And also, I know that people often use a visual timetable, but they don't have an arrow or a pointer which says at which point in the day they're at. Or like they do with them in autistic settings, where when something is finished, they take it off the timetable. So the children know that it's only the things they can see rather than the entire day, and trying to assess where you are in the day for young children is very hard. You know, I think you can have a circle that says now that goes over the top, or an arrow that helps everybody in your class know at which point you are, and also to say it out loud as well. Just because it's up there isn't sufficient for lots of children. Lots of kids are too little to listen to everything you say, and they need more signposting, they need more visual, dramatic, now we're going to go and do this, a lot more kind of showing and telling, making things very visible. But also, particularly for your foreign families that you're not expecting to know what we do here, maybe it's very different where they previously lived, either in your country or somewhere else, send them a list of your timetable, send it home, what you usually do, so they've got a chance to tell their children what to expect. The more information we give children about what's going to happen next, the more we can relax about what we think, what we're going to do in that time space. And I think I would be trying to think about, can these children manage a full day having had such a difficult time? Can they manage the morning? Will they need to sleep more, sit down more, eat more to regulate, to get through the next part of the day? And do you need to, like, you know, lots of settings have a snack table, a snack time. Do you maybe this year need to have a snack table where children can go and get food at any point to regulate themselves? You know, where it's kind of slightly more Montessori, and that they have access to food. If you don't do that in your nursery now, it might be easier for the children who can't ask you, if they could go and just get the food themselves. This is where the food is. If you need some, go and take some. Trying to make it easy for the children to navigate the classroom by themselves without having to talk to anybody if they don't need to. And also in this case, when we're talking about access points, we're also thinking about access people. If there are 2 Ukrainian children in your class, could they be like meant to be kind of traveling around the room together? If there's a Ukrainian person on your staff, could they be put in that person's key group? Could they be given the opportunity, if you've got a lovely Ukrainian receptionist, that they know where she is, even if she's not in your room, and they can ask to go to her? Could there be a photo of that person that they can go and tap if they want to talk to someone in the language that they speak? We're trying to think about, how do we make the interactions that they have and the things they need to do easier by keeping things the same and making it very visual for children that don't know, as well as giving enough information at home that they can kind of help their children to expect what is to come. Wendy, I don't think your microphone's on.
just been talking to myself there for the last few minutes. So I was just saying there that if you have any questions, just pop them into the Q&A box, because I know Saskia is giving a lot of ideas here, or if you have ideas yourself, put them into the chat box for everyone else to learn from. I know that we have some people doing that already. So we just want to move on a little bit now to feelings of safety. So you talked about that a little bit, with separation anxiety, but how do you actually promote those feelings of safety, especially with children that may have experienced some trauma?
Yeah, so when we think about how the brain works, if you imagine your head, we don't have to imagine it, you've got one. At the bottom part of your brain, where your head connects into your neck, it's in terms of an emotional, like what it's doing emotionally, obviously it does lots of things. It tells your body to pump blood around the body, it does those things. But in terms of your emotional well-being, the bottom part of your brain is in charge of our safety. So it's a biological process that all animals and all reptiles and all creatures have, which is that our number one job is to keep ourselves alive. And when we experience something that makes us feel a threat to our safety, and that might not be an actual threat, it might just feel like an emotional threat, or that something has changed that makes us feel uneasy or uncomfortable, we trigger in our own brain lots and lots of safety mechanisms. So for example, we start by, if let's say we're sitting where we are now and there's a funny noise in our home or wherever you're sitting in your office, there's a funny noise and you think, my brain cannot link that noise to a specific thing. Could it be someone in my house? Could it be something is broken? What could it be? There's something going on that I don't know. Until you have reason to act on it, your body will start creating cortisol. So cortisol is a chemical that we have which lets us know that there's something to be worried about. And it continues to pump until we have enough, we're worried enough to take action. So if suddenly someone came through the door, you would start making adrenaline and it would make you decide whether you wanted to fight them, you wanted to run away from them, you wanted to freeze. But if there was no need, if nothing happened, we just heard this funny noise and it made us feel uncomfortable, we would end up with this kind of drip feed of cortisol until we felt safe enough for it to stop. And that can happen for children in situations where nothing particularly bad has happened, but something doesn't feel right. So we know that children are really, really excellent at kind of reading environmental emotional signals. So they know when their parents aren't well, they know when their parents aren't getting on with each other, they know when their parents are anxious about something. They might not understand that what it means to be worried about money because they're much too little, but they understand when there's something not right. And when we end up with kind of too much cortisol in general in our system, it leads children to have bad sleep, bad eating, physical pains like stomach aches, headaches, somatic pain. And it leads to children who are very, very anxious and worried about things. And when we have trauma, we've had an actual experience that's really threatened our safety. So that's a feeling of unsafety rather than an actual thing that's not safe or an actual dangerous thing. But let's say a child, God forbid, was in a car accident or a child had to flee their home, there would be a real sense of actual danger. And that's when the whole body goes into kind of panic systems. And even if in that situation, you've got a parent who's really calm and really amazing and able to kind of navigate it for you, there would still almost definitely be some kind of impact. So if your parents get divorced and you're left in a home with one parent, the feeling of safety is halved because you had two people to look after you and now you have one. If you were in a car accident, the feeling that the people that look after you are able to do that, even if it wasn't their fault, is less. If you have to leave your home in the night because you're in a dangerous situation, there would definitely be an actual impact of a lack of safety leading to trauma. And when we're thinking about those things, and that could be any child in your class who might be experiencing something difficult, either they've got a feeling that something's wrong and it's not being fixed, which means they would have a constant trickle of cortisol making them feel uncomfortable and anxious, or they will have had an actual impactful physical experience which will have led to cortisol and then adrenaline and then the feelings of absolute terror that you get when you have no control. And in all of those situations, what we're trying to do, because you're not a therapist, you're a teacher, you're a key worker, you're a specialist in your field, is we're trying to restore a feeling of safety. If you imagine that, for example, let's say your house gets broken into, the things you would do to restore safety are maybe put in a new lock, maybe put a bolt on the back of the door, maybe put in a camera on the front of your house, maybe ask a friend to come and stay with you. And once those things have happened, and if you really were very worried, you might even move house to restore your feeling of safety. In those situations, what you've done is you've done logistical things to remind your body that it's safe. So in the situation of a divorce, you've now got two parents that live in two separate homes. It feels very nerve-wracking because you used to have two people look after you at once and now you don't. What we're doing in that situation, the things that would make you feel better would be that both parents still care for you properly, that both parents still meet your needs, that you still see them pretty much as you did before, that there isn't anyone else to kind of navigate, that things don't change very much. Those things would continue the feeling of safety, but often after difficult situations, those things don't happen. The upheaval and the change mean that lots of things feel different. And so it doesn't go back to feeling how you expected very quickly. And so we end up with more cortisol, more adrenaline, and we end up in this kind of like panic state where we don't know how long things will take to get better. And we sometimes don't even know if they will get better. And it means that children really can't function because they don't know whether they're going to have to run away or they're going to have to escape something because nobody's put things back in the right place. So as a nursery setting or a care setting, what we're trying to do is make it feel like at least where we are at school, we can expect everything to be the same. So we're trying to put the things back in place that make it feel safe. I don't know what's going on at your house. You're not saying it's the child, you're saying it to yourself. I don't know what's going on at their house, but I know what I can do here. It can feel exactly the same here as it did last week before their parents were divorced or before their grandma died. It will feel the same here. So the more quickly we return children to a feeling of the same level of safety and security that they had before, the quicker they get better, whatever happens to them. And the reason why, for example, children benefit from going to therapy when something bad happens to them is it adds another level of reliable safety. There's another adult on my team that cares about me. I see them every week, so I can expect it. They're always on time. They're always nice to me. I can expect them to be pleased to see me. I don't have to worry that they're stressed out because their job is to look after me. And it takes away some of the fears of not being looked after, but it also adds a whole level of safety, which is another adult looks after me and cares for me. So we're trying to show children we're on top of things. We know what's going on. If there's chaos in your classroom, you get rid of it quickly. If it's very, very loud, you calm it down quickly. You're trying to show children that the adults in their team, in your setting, are in control. The more we do that, the more we cuddle children, we sit close with them, we make sure we talk to them, we make sure we ask them about things if they want to talk about them, that they can, but it is not your job ever to sit down and kind of unpick a child's deep trauma. You know, it's too much for you in your setting while you're doing other things. If you're worried about a child, make a referral to your senior leadership, to a local therapist, to something else, but it's not your job to unpick their trauma. What really can be your job is trying to restore a feeling of safety for children who are feeling unsafe after change. So we do that by having the same structures every day, being kind and positive, not asking children to ever worry about us. So you've got a bad back, you don't say to the children, oh, my back is terrible. Even if you feel that way, say it to the other adults, but don't make your issues the children's issues. The reason they're coming to you is because they need adults to look after them, and they want to feel safe with you, and they want to feel like things are reliable. And so for children that come to you that are new, if you are going to have children who, for example, are refugee children who've just come from Ukraine, what we're trying to show them very quickly is things are the same. The adults here look after you. We do everything that you need. We have everything that you need, and there's nothing to worry about here. In these walls, we're in charge, and we do the things you like, and we do it very well. And we're trying to do that as quickly as possible so that children can begin to relax quickly. As soon as they start to relax because they can trust us to do what we say we will, they begin to make less cortisol almost immediately. They also begin to relax. You'll see a physical change. They'll breathe more deeply. They will start to enjoy themselves. They'll look less stressed. They will engage more. They will stop doing kind of minimal self-harming behaviors we see in children, like picking finger skin and pulling their own hair. Children who are anxious or depressed or worried because of a feeling of lack of safety very quickly can feel safe again if we manage to put things in that work well over and over again. And if you imagine that there's a part of your brain that literally stores same experiences. It's in the hippocampus. It's a part that also does dreams. And what it does is it stores similar events next to each other. So we get an experience of whether we can trust or not trust situations. So let's say I was just slam the door in the room that I'm in now, because you've heard doors slam your whole life, you would probably assume that it wasn't anything dangerous, because you've got lots of experiences of doors slamming back to back in one part of your brain, and your brain would go, oh, I know that noise, it's a door slamming, it's probably fine. And we'd all carry on as if nothing had happened. And what we're trying to do is give this child as many experiences quickly as possible, that the place that you are is as safe as possible, so that they can then trust that and continue. And if you're very worried about children, if you're very worried about it, do share, do say so, say to the parent, your child's very unsettled, I'm worried about it, they don't seem to find, they're calm, they aren't able to play with other children, you know, what's going on that we can help with. But what we're really trying to do is kind of shut off the box. So we're trying to work out what is the thing that makes that child feel worried and scared, and how do we take that away as quickly as possible and make things really consistent. So if it's that when the doors open, that really freaks out the children, tell the children, I'm shutting the doors now, and all the doors will be shut until we open them. If you want to go outside, let us know and we'll open them. But for now, we're all inside and everything's shut. For some children, it will be the opposite. They won't want the doors to be shut. Well, you've got to work out, what are we going to do? For some children, they need the safety that the doors are shut. And for some children, they need the safety they can get out of there. So we've got to work out which one. The door in this room is shut. If you'd like to feel like everything's shut, you can come in this room. And if you need the door to be open, you can come in this room. We're trying to work out what it is that's making that child feel unsafe and get rid of it as quickly as possible, like we would in our own house if we were broken into. What would we do to make it feel safe straight away? So we're thinking logistically and emotionally, and trying to find consistency in that for the differences in children's needs based on their trauma.
And that's such a great analogy, you know, when you're thinking of, if my house is broken into, what are the steps that I would take? And we have a comment from an attendee who says that we took in 17 children after Easter, and the changes by June were just as you describe. The older children had to grow up beyond their years, but by mid-May had become children again, you know, and that's why,
well
yes,
done. That's a huge achievement. That's a huge achievement. And it's true that if you're kind of bracing yourself for new families, the beginning part is overwhelming, particularly because you don't know their experience, you don't know what they will need, you don't speak the language, it all feels very overwhelming. And then very quickly you remember people are people, children are children. And if we do what we've always done and we show kindness, very quickly, just as this lovely person has said, you'll see the same kind of changes in your setting with new kids, even if they've come from a very difficult background.
Yeah, and another attendee saying that they have found first and then boards very helpful alongside the visual timeline. I think they're two fantastic resources. Do you want to talk any more about them, Saskia?
I think exactly. The idea is to just make it very, very clear for children some children can look at your timetable and work out, right, I remember we just read the story, now we're probably going to go and wash hands. Some children can do that, and lots of children can't, particularly if they're very little. So having anything that makes it easier to work out where in the day you are and how much more you have. For children who are nervous about seeing their parents again, for children who can't work out how long they stay, having a kind of landmark where you go like, this is the middle of the morning. What we've done already, we're going to do again. You know, for some children, that's really helpful. We don't really say that to kids, you know. Well, we finish at 11:30 and the children are like, 11:30. You know, this is the middle of the morning and we've got the same again. Can be quite useful for children. At least they know they can be a bit relaxed if they've done already half. You know, they've already done half, they've only got to hold on for another half. And that's okay. You know, you've had a lovely morning, it's the same again, and then mummy will be picking up, or daddy will be picking up, or grandma will be picking up, and children might be able to manage that more.
Yeah.
Than an actual time.
And another participant is saying that she totally agrees with the structure and the importance of routine, as this makes their time in the setting predictable and gives them a sense of security, which of course makes them feel safe. And I think a really key part of her comment is that the practitioner has such a key role here in providing this.
Yeah, and I think if you feel like there's anyone in your team that hasn't fully understood why it's important, just start again with them. Say, you are really good fun. And the things you do with the kids where you like suddenly bring out like a box of surprising things is really great, and we love it. But could we just wait a bit further in the year for it, because the kids we've got have just come in and they're a bit new, and it's although it's obviously really fun and you definitely are the funnest person on the team and we really love you, any chance we could just kind of give a minute before we start kind of changing up the timetable. Let's get everybody settled in for the full day before we start mixing things up. Try and have a kind of, it's the same in second later primary as well. It's easier if you always have literacy first, then you have a snack, then you have math, then you have that every morning feels the same, and the afternoons can be a bit more quirky because they only have to hold on a little bit longer to get back to their safety figures. So I'd be kind of thinking, for example, if you happen to have someone in your setting who's very shouty, and sometimes we've all worked with people who shout a lot with little children. I really am very good at not shouting. It's one of my really big skills. And I once worked with someone who was so shouty that after a few weeks of working with her, I was one of the shoutiest teachers I'd ever heard, just because it's kind of osmosis. If generally people don't shout in your setting, people don't shout. And if generally people do shout in your setting, people do shout. There is no way that you will calm children down from trauma if you're in a very shouty setting. It's just not going to happen. It will only make children feel anxious, particularly the very well-behaved children. The children who behave nicely will feel more anxious because of the shouting, and it isn't their fault that you're shouting, and it's not fair in any way to shout at a child who hasn't done anything wrong. And just because you're not shouting at them doesn't mean they're not going to be affected. So I would, before you set out your goals for your team for September, I would say, sometimes we can all get a bit shouty. This year we're really trying not to. We're really trying not to. Is there anything else we can do to try and bring the level down that we make of noise, so that we can try and make it a calmer setting for everyone as well?
And I think that brings us nicely to our next question as well. So what is the silent period, and what do we do to support children in that phase?
Yeah, so the silent period in this case is about children trying to take on language in new settings. So we'll find it also with bilingual children who have parents that speak 2 different languages, or even 3 different languages at home, that they tend to kind of begin speaking in a more natural way later on. And in this situation, what we're talking about is children coming from a new country who don't speak the language. Not that, obviously there are some children who will be coming from Ukraine that do speak English. They happen to have English grandparents, so one of their parents also speaks English and speaks some English at home. It's not that it will be completely irregular for children to come speaking English. It's might be less irregular than we think. But what's very likely to happen is that you'll have a child that comes and maybe they're quite chatty at the beginning in Ukrainian or any other language that they speak, and then very quickly when they realize it's not really working, they just stop talking. And the silent period is this kind of transitional moment when their brain is trying to switch over to processing something they don't understand, and it takes time. And what we do, like with lots and lots of speech things that you'll be finding in your nurseries and settings, is we try to kind of ignore them but track them. So it's a very strange kind of way to set it out. So you're kind of thinking, well, on Tuesday he was definitely talking to another child, even if the other child didn't understand him, and for the last 3 days I haven't heard him make a single noise. So I would be tracking it. I think it's a really good time to use a Teach Cloud, tracking form or something like that, to make sure that you've kind of got this knowledge. So when you present back to the parent, you say, well, it's completely normal and we are tracking it so you don't have to worry. But at the moment, we're seeing a kind of withdrawal in language. I wonder if that's the same as at home. And what you do is you carry on as normal. So you don't say why aren't you talking? What's going on? Why don't you come over here and talk to me? You don't do that. You carry on as if you haven't noticed. So you'd still talk to them the same way that you would another child at the same table. Would you like a green ball? Would you like the pencil? Should we go to the carpet and do building? And then take them with you. But if they don't respond to you, there's no problem. Their brain is trying to process something totally different. It's like putting the wrong ingredients into a machine, or the wrong ingredients into a cake and expecting a cake to come out the oven. They don't know, even though they kind of can understand because they're children and they understand they're playing somewhere. So much of what's going on is a complete bombardment that they have to be quiet to understand the noise. And I think it's about tracking it. It's about saying, right, we're quite a few weeks in now. Are there any other things we could do? Once we know that the child is actually settled, they do play nicely, but they don't talk. Could they go to a very small intervention group that doesn't really seem like an intervention group, like a singing group, where if they don't sing, it doesn't matter, but they can kind of see how these things happen. And the other thing I think is also, I can't remember the name of the specific structure, but in the UK, we regularly use this thing where you read the same book every single day for the week, or even a few weeks. So you read The Hungry Caterpillar every day, and you show the children while you're reading the specific word and the specific thing that you're trying to talk about. And then eventually, you know, even the children that don't speak English or don't speak at all, they know the word caterpillar, and they know the word leaf, and they know the word lollipop. They don't know any of the other words in the book, but they know those ones. And that begins to make a kind of a small amount of vocabulary that they then increase based on the amount of books that you've read over and over again as a class. So instead of trying to mix things up, it's trying to keep things the same, to give those children a chance to catch up and a chance to kind of process the one thing that you're saying. If you've read that book 10 times, they're more likely to be able to assign meaning to certain parts of the book that you get to. So I think it's about tracking it, but very, very calmly, and also making sure the parent knows that it's something that we were expecting and something that we're tracking, so they don't have to be worried about. And that you hope that they're still speaking kind of relatively normally at home, but they also might not be, and that's okay. So, and if you are worried, then also to kind of speak to a speech and language therapist in your area, if it's been a very, very long time and that child still hasn't managed to kind of say even one word or two words, like toilet or stick or something that helps them to engage with the play, then I would, after a good few months, really a few months, I really give them a good amount of time, 6 months, then I would think about, do they need to have some kind of engagement with their speech and language therapist to come in and assess them in your setting, in case there's anything else you can do.
Yeah, I think the point about the silent period is really important, because sometimes when a child isn't like engaging or they're not talking, we might think, oh my God, is something wrong? Or maybe they don't like us, or, you know, and all of this is just so normal. You know, if it were me and I went to a place where I didn't understand anything, or when I spoke, nobody understood me, I probably would want to be silent as well. My brain, what is going on, you know, just to see what's happening. And I think the point about reading the same book over and over again, that's a really important point, because research does back that up with regards to things like word recognition and pattern formation, because obviously you're reading the same book over and over again, and of course comprehension as well, or even having a book, but you know, you can have books in dual languages, so that can be really helpful, because you might read it in English in the setting, and then maybe, or whatever the dominant language is, and then maybe when they go home, their parent can read it in their language as well, so bridging that homeschool connection, and lots of different varieties of a way to use those books as well. So we're actually on to our last question now, and it is, how do we foster homeschool relationships?
Yeah, I think the thing you've just said about shared books was one of the things I was going to mention, which is a really, really good one, because it's very relaxed. So you can be reading the same one at school for the first week, and then you can ask one parent who speaks a different language if they wouldn't mind coming in to read the same book. But also, I think one of the other things we can do is try and actually help our parents to become friends, parents in our setting. So often we find that parents hardly talk to each other. You might have 1 or 2 friends in your child's group that you say hi to in the morning on your way into school or on the way out of school. But there are ways that we can actually help our families, particularly these new families that might be moving to our areas. And often we think like, oh no, we can't really do that because we haven't really got the space. But there might be literally a coffee shop around the corner, and you can organize the time meeting. So you'd say, we're organizing a parents get to know you meeting just for parents, and no one has to come. You don't have to change your timetable. You don't have to do anything different. But, you know, if you'd like to attend, then you can ask the coffee shop, would it be okay if, you know, they had 20p off their coffee if they say that they're from our, you know, 20 euro cents off our coffee. If they say they're from our nursery today, and they can come and meet each other, and just help them to be friends without you. And particularly for these families that are new to the area, it could be a very good way to help them do it very calmly and slowly without having to feel like they've been put out on display, which I think is a very funny feeling for people who've moved, that there's everyone, oh, they're the people who've moved, you know, it wouldn't be a nice feeling. But if you did something which, like, as if you always do it, our annual first term parent coffee morning, whether you do that or not, it would make them feel like you do. you know, and it will make them feel like they were less involved. I think we're also trying to use things like Teach Cloud as a very, very good way to give very quick messages and updates to families so that they know that they can ask and tell us anything, and we will ask and tell them anything. You know, even for example, just how quickly you can pass on to parents that their child might have fallen down and hurt themselves. It makes parents trust schools. It makes them trust schools that will tell them if something serious happens, that we're tracking their kids in the way that they would at home. And I think we're just trying to think other ways that we could bring our families in to see the kids work. Could you make an art exhibition where just at the end of the day there is 5 minutes where they can come and see one piece of art that every child has made, hang them on a washing line, don't back them, don't stick them up with Velcro, don't do anything that's massively labor intensive. Just see if there are ways that you can bring your families in to make a connection with you without having to do too much, because the job is already so much. You know, working in a nursery setting is non-stop. You hardly sit down, you hardly get time to drink a cold cup of tea. And if you, but if there are ways to make families feel invested in you and feel like you're a great setting, it's the kind of thing that makes families you know, recommend you to friends, makes families feel comfortable with you, makes families remember your setting forever. You know, I went to a setting where they did a butterfly release. They had one of those lovely sets where the children watch the caterpillars get bigger, and then they release the butterflies. It was about 10 minutes. It was extremely lovely. They released the butterflies and the children sung "There's a tiny caterpillar on a leaf," and that was it. It was literally a 10-minute interlude just to drop off. So it wasn't at a weird time. No one had to do anything they weren't doing. I think the key is to think about minimal interactions for you that make an impact for parents. And now we can have more parents in settings post-COVID. How can we, without taking on too much work, give parents opportunities to connect with us and connect with their children and have these memories that they then keep? And particularly for families who will feel like they are lost and far from home, to have these moments to come and make new memories, new, fun, safe, beautiful, kind memories with their kids and with you, will make a very big difference in their healing process, to feel like they've found somewhere where people look after them, rather than people like where they've had to escape and they couldn't be themselves where they were and all those sorts of things. They can find a kind of safety and happiness and experience with you that makes their children feel excited and proud, and the parents feel excited and proud. It will do a great deal to help them with the trauma of having moved. And I'd be thinking kind of minimal, very minimal interactions that kind of give people memories. So anything with singing, art, music, anything where the parents can join in and play a game, and also trying to give opportunities for parents to meet without you. You know, could you make a deal with the cafe around the corner in your local village that on a Thursday morning every other week parents can go there and hang out? You know, obviously lots of parents work, lots of parents out of it. Maybe speak to your parents. When would be the best time for this particular cohort to have their parent morning? And don't be involved. Don't go there and serve the coffee. Don't pay for the coffees yourself, but see if there's something that you can do to kind of help make more of a community atmosphere in your school when you don't even have to be involved, particularly for these families that have lost a lot and lost their safety and their structures. See if we can help them very minimally by helping them to feel part of a community very quickly.
And Saskia, you've given so many great ideas here. And I think the last one was really good, because like that, you know, the parents can get to know each other. It can help them be calmer, feel like they know another parent. But like you said throughout, get to know your parents, get to know your children, get to know what their needs are, what do they want, you know. But of course, you're only one person. You're an early years educator. You can't be everything to everyone. And so that's why, you know, using different things like apps or doing webinars like these, you know, try and get as much information as you can, but at the same time, be kind to yourselves, because I know so many early years educators are trying to do their best now. You know, there's so much going on. There's different changes in our society, but you can only do your best. And at Teach Cloud, we like to keep it short and sweet. So I'm actually going to end the webinar here. That was our last question. And to everyone that joined us today, thank you so much. You can follow Saskia Joss on Instagram, and she gives like a lot of even, you know, like free tips, inspiration. So that's at Saskia Joss Therapy on Instagram. And if you have any questions at all, we can always forward them on to Saskia if they're for her. You can email hello@teachcloud.com or visit our website, teachcloud.com. So thanks again.